Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking something that is, well, it's deeply unsettling but absolutely fascinating. We're going to tackle a massive, terrifying what if. What if the Axis powers had actually won World War II? We're going to immerse ourselves in an alternate timeline where history took a catastrophic turn and really look at how this alternate reality functions from the top down.
So, let's just dive right into this dark thought experiment. I want you to imagine waking up in a global order where Hitler's nightmare vision wasn't crushed, but instead, it became the permanent framework of human civilization. The source poses this chilling question: what if the Allied flag never rose? We're looking at a scenario where the map of the world is carved out by conquest and total control. It's a really heavy concept, I know, but it's absolutely crucial for understanding just how fragile our own history actually is.
All right, moving on to part 1, how the Axis survived.
For this dark reality to actually take shape, the source points out that it requires a disastrous cascade of strategic failures. It's not just one magic moment, right? It's a domino effect. Imagine Britain falling under unbearable military and economic pressure, eventually forced to seek peace. The Soviet Union, totally unable to recover from the brutal initial invasion, just collapses. Meanwhile, the United States remains firmly isolated across the Atlantic for way too long, and critical operations like D-Day, they completely fail or just never happen at all. It's this exact perfect storm of strategic shifts that forces a catastrophic negotiation, handing Germany uncontested dominion over Europe.
Which brings us to part 2, redrawing the global map.
With the war over, the geopolitical breakdown is absolute, and honestly, it's terrifying. Britain loses its Atlantic balance and its entire global empire, transformed basically overnight into a heavily monitored satellite state. The fate of the Soviet Union is even worse. It's completely partitioned and ruthlessly exploited, with millions perishing under systematic ethnic cleansing and forced labor. And the United States? It's left totally isolated and deeply paranoid, forced into a permanent, highly militarized state just to contain the overwhelming threat across the ocean. The American century, as we know it, completely erased before it even gets off the ground.
Now, the Cold War in our timeline was incredibly tense, but here, it plays out completely differently. The world fractures into multiple, deeply hostile spheres. You've got a massive German-led authoritarian bloc dominating Europe and Africa, a weakened U.S. democratic bloc in the Americas, and a sprawling Japanese sphere strictly dominating Asia. This terrifying web of tension completely crushes any hope for global decolonization. Entire continents are just locked down, freezing the globe in a state of permanent, high-alert crisis, where literally one wrong move means total annihilation.
But, stepping away from the macro maps and the giant movements of armies, we really have to zoom in here. What does this world actually feel like to an ordinary person? How does this massive geopolitical nightmare trickle down to a citizen who's just, trying to get through their day, go to work, and protect their family?
Let's look at part 3, everyday life under terror.
In this alternate timeline, the Holocaust doesn't end. It isn't remembered as a horrific historical crime that was finally stopped. Instead, it becomes deeply institutionalized. It's the permanent, legitimized blueprint for global state policy. Jewish survival becomes an act of constant, desperate concealment inside a system meticulously designed to erase entire peoples. The machinery of death isn't dismantled, it's perfected, woven right into the very administrative fabric of the global order.
And this creates a suffocating, paralyzing reality for everyone else too. Imagine living your entire life under constant state surveillance, feeling deep in your bones like every single wall has ears and every neighbor is a potential informant. Education is completely stripped of critical thinking, just entirely replaced by rigid propaganda. Art, music, the media, all weaponized purely for state ideology. And most dangerously, possessing an independent mind isn't just frowned upon, it's basically criminalized. Any deviation from the state's narrative is an immediate, lethal threat to your survival.
This naturally leads us to a fascinating, yet terrifying question. As decades pass, does a victorious fascist state just remain a primitive, militant conquest state forever? Or does it evolve as it successfully holds on to global power over generations?
That brings us to part 4, high-tech barbarism.
According to the source, this timeline sees a profound and disturbing corruption of scientific inquiry. Think about our real-world scientific core value, asking what is true for the ultimate benefit of humanity. While here, that noble pursuit is entirely replaced by the regime's singular core value. What serves the state? Brilliant, capable minds are forced to completely abandon their ethics, their research, their funding, their very lives are shaped exclusively by racial doctrine and military utility. Knowledge itself is corrupted right at its root.
And this massive distortion of science actually leads to rapid, terrifying breakthroughs. Driven by endless military needs, you see incredible advancements in rockets, aviation, and cryptography. There's an accelerated, incredibly paranoid nuclear arms race that pushes technology forward at breakneck speed. But medicine and life-saving treatments, those are restricted strictly to the privileged elite. The nightmare here isn't a return to the Dark Ages. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a sleek, highly efficient, technologically dazzling society that is utterly devoid of mercy or basic human empathy.
Let's turn to Part 5, the spark of resistance.
Because here's the thing. A regime can heavily control its territory. It can control the borders, the airspace, the media, but it can never fully control the human conscience. Resistance in this dark reality isn't just about moving armies or giving grand speeches. It's found in small, profound, everyday acts of defiance. It's a mother desperately protecting her child from the state's gaze. It's a student secretly reading forbidden ideas in the dark. A teacher quietly preserving banned books under a hidden floorboard. Or a doctor carefully forging identities to save innocent lives.
The source has this powerful quote: "The regime can dominate history, but it cannot fully own the soul." In a reality where diversity is an open target and the air itself is politically charged, simply preserving your own independent thought becomes the ultimate revolutionary act. These quiet, desperate moments of human dignity are what keep the fragile spark of hope alive in a world that has otherwise been completely plunged into darkness.
So we're left with a grim, unforgettable portrait from this text. A future of perfect order without justice, advanced technology without mercy, and absolute power without conscience. It's a stark reminder that progress without justice isn't true advancement at all. A civilization can become technologically breathtaking. It can literally conquer the stars, and yet still be fundamentally, irreparably horrifying at its core.
Ultimately, this alternate reality leaves us with a stark warning about the profound fragility of freedom. What happens when evil is not defeated in time? It forces us to deeply appreciate the narrow historical turning points that prevented this exact nightmare from taking shape. So, I'll pass the question to you. What is your biggest takeaway from exploring this dark historical timeline? Take a moment to really think about that, and let's keep the conversation going.